Welcome, brave traveler. Tonight, we follow Deacon Wade, an enigmatic wanderer who moves through time and worlds unseen, his path shadowed by danger and haunted by echoes of a past he cannot escape. With every tale he offers to the cube, Deacon extends his life, trading memories of battles fought and evil vanquished for more time to unravel the truth behind a sinister force spreading darkness across reality. This is but one chapter in Deacon Wade's relentless journey, a saga of vengeance, mystery, and unyielding resolve. Taken from the Deacon Wade Chronicles, Tales of Vengeance and Shadows. Prepare yourself, for this story begins in a sunken realm lost to the sea, where ancient guardians and deadly curses lurk beneath the waves. Episode 2, The Sunken Sanctuary.
Beneath the veil of a murky twilight, as thunder rolled across the heavens and lightning cleaved the night, Deacon Wade returned once more to the maw of shadows. The wind howled like a vengeful spirit as he stepped into the maw of the cave, water dripping from the hem of his long black coat. The scarlet runes etched into the stone walls of the cave seemed to pulse faintly, their light struggling against the gloom. Deacon moved with measured strides, his dark maroon scarf hanging loosely about his chin, revealing the stern set of his jaw and the unyielding resolve in his eyes. He did not falter as he made his way into the heart of the forbidden cave, where a crimson glow awaited him. The cube hovered silently above its pedestal, its surface etched with shifting glyphs that seemed to writhe with every flicker of light. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with the presence of an entity older than time itself. Deacon knelt before it, his hands brushing the cold stone floor.
I am Deacon Wade. To extend my life, I offer a tale from my travels.
The cube's light shifted, deepening to a darker red, its presence washing over Deacon like a heavy shroud. When it spoke, it did so in a voice that resonated with countless whispers, a chorus of souls bound together in a single utterance.
Time. It flows like blood through the veins of fate. And you, Deacon Wade, have bled much of it. Open your memories, that the worth of your tale may be tasted.
Deacon's eyes closed, and for a moment the cave was filled with silence. Then, the memories surged forth as vivid as if they had happened only moments ago. Tonight's tale takes us to a place swallowed by the unforgiving sea, a sanctuary built to worship the elements, now turned into a prison of watery graves and forlorn spirits. This was the Sunken Sanctuary, a place where even death found no escape from despair. The sea roared like a beast awakened from slumber, waves crashing against the jagged rocks that lined the shore. Deacon Wade stood at the water's edge, his gaze fixed on the dark waters that churned restlessly before him. Above, the sky was a tapestry of storm clouds, flickering with occasional bursts of lightning. The sunken sanctuary awaited him, hidden beneath the ocean's depths, shrouded in secrecy and forgotten by time. Without hesitation, Deacon stepped into the freezing water. With a whispered incantation, the runes on his hands flared to life, and a soft blue light enveloped him, granting him the ability to breathe beneath the waves. He moved through the water with the grace of a shadow, descending into the inky darkness of the sea. The ruins of the sanctuary loomed before him, a sprawling maze of crumbling stone buildings and twisted coral, half buried in the ocean floor. The structures were covered in a thick layer of algae and barnacles, their walls adorned with faded symbols that spoke of a time when the sea was both revered and feared. Deacon swam through the wreckage, his eyes alert for any sign of danger. The currents tugged at his coat, and strange bioluminescent creatures darted past, their bodies leaving faint trails of light in the water. But he ignored them. He was searching for something that pulsed faintly in his senses. It was the artifact he sought, a relic said to hold dominion over the very tides, its power sealed away deep within the sanctuary's heart. But the sanctuary was not without its guardians. A shadow moved in the corner of his vision. Deacon turned, his hand already reaching out to the dimensional pocket he conjured above his shoulder. He envisioned two small daggers, perfect for thrusting and precise strikes. The daggers appeared in his hands, their dark metal glinting faintly. The waters around Deacon shifted, the dark currents parting slightly as a shadowy figure emerged from the ruins. The figure moved with a fluid grace, her long emerald green hair billowing around her like a living curtain. Her form was that of a mermaid, half human, half serpent, with scales that shimmered faintly in the gloom. But there was something more to her, something ethereal. Her eyes, glowing with a soft blue light, fixed on Deacon with an intensity that pierced the surrounding darkness. She was the sanctuary's first guardian, an immortal creature bound to these cursed waters, a spectral knight given flesh and form to protect the sanctity of the ruins. In her hands, she held a long trident, its 3 points glimmering with an otherworldly energy. The trident's shaft was adorned with intricate carvings, depicting scenes of tides and storms.
You dare enter these hallowed waters, intruder? I am bound to ensure none trespass beyond this point. You shall become one with the sea, your bones a testament to your folly.
Deacon did not respond. The spectral knight moved, the trident darting forward like the strike of a serpent. Deacon twisted to the side, feeling the water's resistance against his movements. But he compensated, using short, controlled motions to avoid the trident's barbed points. The knight's attacks were relentless, each thrust aimed to skewer him against the sanctuary's walls. Deacon's gaze never wavered. He shifted his body, bringing his right dagger up in a quick jab aimed at the knight's unguarded side. The blade glanced off her scales, sending a ripple of pale pink blood through the water. She twisted, her tail sweeping around to knock him off balance. Deacon caught the motion just in time and kicked back, avoiding the blow. The water around them churned violently as they fought, each movement deliberate and calculated. Deacon's daggers flashed out in quick stabbing motions, targeting the gaps between the knight's scales. The spectral knight responded with powerful stabs of her trident, each strike sending shockwaves through the water. She was faster in the water, her movements unhindered by the resistance that slowed Deacon's every move. But he did not falter. He adapted, using the currents to his advantage. As she lunged forward with a powerful thrust of her trident, Deacon slipped to the side, his left dagger stabbing into the soft flesh just below her ribcage. The knight hissed, her body recoiling. A dark, pale pink mist spilled from the wound, dissipating into the water like blood. She swung the trident around in a wide arc, forcing Deacon to retreat. But he pressed forward, his daggers a blur of motion as he darted in and out of her reach, landing quick, precise jabs that chipped away at her defenses. Finally, with a powerful kick, Deacon pushed off the sanctuary wall and surged forward, closing the distance between them. His daggers flashed, striking the trident's shaft and knocking it aside. He brought his right dagger up and drove it deep into the knight's chest, just below her collarbone. The spectral knight gasped, her glowing eyes widening. The trident slipped from her grasp, drifting slowly to the sea floor below. Deacon withdrew his daggers, the blades trailing a faint pinkish mist that mingled with the water. She hovered there for a moment, her form shimmering, then began to dissolve, her body disintegrating into a cloud of glowing particles. Her eyes lingered on Deacon, a strange, almost mournful expression in their depths, before she vanished completely, leaving only the empty silence of the sanctuary behind. Deacon swam deeper into the sanctuary, weaving through narrow passageways and half-collapsed chambers. The further he ventured, the more oppressive the water became. The very currents seemed to resist his presence, pulling him back, pushing him away. The sanctuary was alive with ancient magic, and it did not take kindly to intruders. Ahead, a large archway loomed, its surface covered in glowing runes that pulsed with a soft, green light. As Deacon approached, the runes flared, and a wave of energy surged outward, slamming into him. He was thrown back, his body crashing against a nearby pillar. Pain lanced through him, but he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. The rune's energy lashed out again, forming a swirling vortex that threatened to drag him into the archway's maw. Deacon reached out, his fingers brushing the runes on his hands. With a whispered command, the runes flared to life, creating a shimmering barrier that pushed back against the vortex. Bit by bit, he forced his way through the archway, his eyes narrowed in concentration. The vortex howled around him, tearing at his coat, but he did not relent. With a final surge of strength, he broke through, the vortex dissipating in a shower of sparks. He landed on the other side, his breathing heavy, his heart pounding in his chest, but there was no time to rest. He could feel the artifact's presence growing stronger, drawing him deeper into the sanctuary's core. He pushed himself forward, navigating a series of twisting corridors that sloped downward, leading into a cavernous chamber. The walls were adorned with faded murals, barely visible through the algae and coral that had claimed them. But Deacon's sharp gaze caught glimpses of what they depicted, scenes of the sanctuary's former glory, and the cataclysmic event that had sent it to its watery grave. The chamber opened up into a wide expanse, its floor littered with broken columns and shattered statues. The water was thick here, heavy with silt, and the lingering energy of the long-forgotten rituals that had once been performed in this place. Deacon felt the weight of it pressing down on him, as if the water itself was trying to crush him beneath its unforgiving grasp, but he pressed on. His destination lay beyond, a narrow passageway that led to the heart of the sanctuary. As he swam through the passage, he was suddenly struck by a powerful current, as if the sanctuary itself had decided to turn against him. The current slammed him into the wall, and before he could react, a heavy chunk of stone broke free from the ceiling above. The stone crashed down, striking Deacon on the side of his head. Pain exploded behind his eyes, and for a moment his world tilted. His thoughts blurred, slipping away like sand through his fingers. The water around him darkened, his vision narrowing to a single point of light. His hands flailed, reaching out instinctively, but his coordination was lost. The water-breathing spell faltered. He felt it unravel, the blue light around him flickering and fading. Panic surged through him as water began to seep into his lungs, each breath a painful struggle. His mind was a haze of confusion and pain, the blow to his head leaving him dazed and disoriented. Deacon's body convulsed, his lungs burning as water filled his mouth and nose. His hands fumbled, trying to reactivate the spell, but his thoughts were scattered like leaves in a storm. He felt his body beginning to sink, the darkness closing in around him. For the first time in a long while, he felt fear. The cold, unrelenting grip of fear as his vision began to blur. Images flickered through his mind, a memory of a young boy, his face obscured by shadows, standing alone in the ruins of a place that felt both familiar and distant. The boy turned, his eyes, so similar to Deacon's own, filled with a sadness that pierced through the fog of pain and fear. The memory was gone in an instant, leaving Deacon gasping for breath, water filling his lungs. He kicked again, his hand reaching for the runes on his wrist, but his fingers slipped, his thoughts scattering. Deacon's lungs screamed for air, his body thrashing weakly against the pull of the water. But just as the darkness began to close in, a single thought pierced through the haze, a thought of the entity he hunted, the darkness that sought to consume all timelines and realities. His jaw clenched, and with a surge of willpower, he reached for the runes once more. The runes flared, a pale blue light enveloping him. The water-breathing spell snapped back into place, the suffocating pressure around his chest easing. Deacon coughed, expelling the water from his lungs, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The pain in his head was still there, a dull throbbing that clouded his thoughts, but he was alive. Slowly he reoriented himself, his hands shaking slightly as he reached out for support against the wall. The sanctuary seemed to hum around him, the currents whispering taunts in his ears. But Deacon ignored them. He forced himself to focus, his eyes narrowing as he pushed through the pain and disorientation. He had come too far to be stopped now. The artifact was close. He could feel its presence pulsing like a heartbeat, calling out to him from the depths below. The passageway opened into a vast, domed chamber. The water here was colder, its currents sluggish and heavy. Massive columns rose from the floor, their surfaces covered in a strange, glowing algae that cast eerie shadows across the chamber. And at the center of it all, atop a stone pedestal, was the artifact. The artifact glowed with a soft, pulsating light, an orb of swirling water and energy, its surface shifting and twisting as if alive. Deacon's gaze locked onto it, a sense of determination settling over him. But he knew it would not be unguarded. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, the water vibrating with a deep, resonant sound. From the shadows a massive shape emerged, a creature of nightmare and legend, the Leviathan Warden. Its body was serpentine, covered in iridescent scales that shimmered with every movement, its eyes burning with the heartlessness of twin suns, fixed on Deacon with a predatory gaze. The Leviathan Warden reared back, its maw opening wide to reveal rows of jagged teeth. With a roar that shook the very foundation of the chamber, it lunged forward, its massive body coiling and twisting with terrifying speed. Deacon darted to the side, his movements quick and controlled. But the Leviathan was faster. It twisted its body, its tail whipping around in a powerful arc. The blow caught Deacon in the ribs, the force of the impact sending him crashing into a nearby column. Pain lanced through his chest. He felt something crack, 2 ribs at least. His breath hitched, the agony nearly blinding. But there was no time to dwell on it. The Leviathan was already moving, its body cutting through the water like a blade. Deacon reoriented himself, his vision blurring with pain. He muttered an incantation, his fingers brushing against the runes on his hands. The runes flared with a faint greenish light, and he felt the spell take hold, a minor healing spell that knitted the broken bones together just enough to keep him moving. The pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting, but it was manageable. The Leviathan's next strike came from below, its jaws snapping upward in an attempt to crush Deacon against the ceiling of the chamber. Deacon twisted, his body moving through the water in a tight spiral to avoid the creature's fangs. He jabbed forward with one of his daggers, the blade sinking into the soft flesh beneath the Leviathan's jaw. A sickly yellow blood seeped from the wound, clouding the water around them. But the wound barely slowed the creature. Its massive tail lashed out again, sending Deacon spinning through the water. The pain in his chest flared, but he pushed it aside, his gaze sharpening as he steadied himself. The Leviathan roared, its maw opening wide as it surged forward, its massive jaws closing in for the kill. Deacon knew he only had seconds. He kicked off the stone floor, propelling himself forward. His hands moved with practiced precision, bringing the two daggers together as he muttered a spell under his breath. The daggers flared with a blinding light, their edges shimmering as they fused into a single blade. The blade elongated, its surface radiating with a brilliant orange energy. Deacon's eyes narrowed as he twisted his body, allowing the Leviathan's jaws to snap shut just inches from his face. With a swift motion, Deacon drove the elongated blade upward, the point of the weapon plunging deep into the Leviathan's eye socket. The creature's roar turned into a high-pitched shriek as the blade's orange energy erupted, flash-frying the beast's brain in a burst of searing light. The Leviathan's body convulsed violently, its massive coils thrashing through the water with terrifying force. Deacon held on, his muscles straining as the creature's death throes shook the chamber. The blade in his hands shuddered, cracks spreading along its surface as the energy within it surged wildly. With a final ear-splitting roar, the Leviathan's movement slowed, its body twitching sporadically. The orange blade shattered, its energy dissipating in a wave of light that sent ripples through the chamber. Deacon released what remained of the weapon, his breath coming in harsh, ragged gasps as he watched the Leviathan's eyes dim. Slowly, the creature's form went still, its massive body drifting lifelessly in the water. Deacon felt a surge of relief, but he did not let his guard down. He cast a spell, creating a pocket of air around the Leviathan's remains. The chamber was filled with a rancid, fishy stench, the smell of the creature's decaying flesh mingling with the lingering energy of the spell.
Your wretchedness shall be cleansed to serve the unseen will of Talmir.
Deacon calmly informed the Leviathan's lifeless mass. He removed his gloves, revealing the glowing silver runes etched into his skin. His hands, trembling slightly from the pain and exhaustion, hovered over the Leviathan's disintegrating form. The lime-green mist began to rise, slowly at first, then faster, drawn toward his hands as if by an invisible force. The mist flowed into Deacon's hands, the runes glowing brighter and brighter until they shone like molten silver. His hazel eyes, normally cold and unyielding, flared with the same silver light. The Leviathan's form dissolved completely, its cursed essence consumed by the runes. Deacon stood there for a moment, his eyes still glowing faintly as the last traces of the mist vanished into his hands. The chamber was silent now. The oppressive weight of the Leviathan's presence lifted. Yet the water still seemed to hum with residual energy, as if the very stones of the sanctuary remembered the battle that had just taken place. Deacon's breaths came in shallow gasps, his ribs throbbing with every movement. He glanced down at his chest, where a faint glow lingered around the edges of the spell that had mended his broken bones. It was a temporary fix, one that would not hold much longer, but it would have to suffice. He turned his gaze back to the pedestal, where the artifact still hovered. Its light pulsed softly, as if beckoning him closer. Deacon moved forward, his steps slow and measured. He could feel the artifact's power radiating outward, a sense of vast, untamed energy that made the water around him tremble. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the surface of the orb. A surge of energy coursed through him, and his vision blurred. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of the sanctuary in its prime, of the rituals that had been performed here, of the catastrophe that had dragged it down into the abyss. And then, a dark shadow loomed at the edge of his vision. The same entity he had been hunting through time, its presence a stain upon the fabric of reality. It reached out, its form twisting and shifting, a blackness that threatened to consume everything in its path. Deacon's jaw clenched. He pushed the vision away, his mind clearing. The artifact's light dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging his resistance. With a steady hand, Deacon grasped the artifact and pulled it free from the pedestal. The orb's light faded, its power settling into a quiet hum that resonated through his bones. He stored the artifact within his dimensional pocket and turned, his gaze lingering on the empty chamber one last time before he began his ascent back to the surface. Once again, Deacon Wade found himself within the silent darkness of the Maw of Shadows, kneeling before the Crimson Cube. The tale of his journey through the Sunken Sanctuary had been spoken, each detail pouring forth like water from a breached dam. The cube's light pulsed softly, its surface shifting with a myriad of colors. Deacon finished recounting the events, his voice fading into the stillness. For a long moment there was only silence, the weight of the story hanging in the air. Then, the cube's light flickered, as though contemplating his words.
Your tale has been heard and accepted. You're granted more time. Go forth, Deacon Wade, and continue your pursuit.
Deacon rose slowly, his gaze unwavering as he looked into the shifting depths of the cube's light. He inclined his head, a small nod of acknowledgement, and then turned, his coat swirling around him as he made his way back into the shadows. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this tale. I hope you enjoyed the story and felt immersed in this world of fantasy and adventure. If you'd like to hear more epic stories like this, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next chapter in our journey. See you in the next adventure.